Welcome, dear listeners, to our scary stories. Venture with us into the hidden crevices of the mind, where nightmares take root and grow, spilling their darkness into the waking world. Are you ready to walk the line between reality and the macabre? Let's delve into tonight's tale. The town of Larkspur was the very definition of quaint. Nestled at the foot of a wooded hill, its streets were lined with trees that burst into brilliant shades of red, orange, and gold as autumn swept over them. With every gust of wind, the leaves, brittle and dry, whispered tales of years gone by. The streets were bustling with activity. Colorful stalls dotted the main square, their wooden structures creaking softly under the weight of fresh apples, pumpkins, and handcrafted trinkets. Children ran about with painted faces, giggling and clutching caramel apples, while the sweet scent of apple cider wafted through the air, tickling noses and drawing folks towards bubbling pots. Old Mrs. Henderson, sitting on her usual porch swing, was narrating tales of Larkspur's past to any eager ear. But among her tales, one story was particularly gripping, the legend of the cornfield maze. Just beyond that hill, she said, pointing a frail finger towards the west, lies a maze that isn't what it seems. They say in its very heart stands a scarecrow, not of straw and cloth, but of lost souls and dark magic. Those who dared to enter by midnight, well, they never came back. A group of teenagers, lounging on their bikes at the street corner, listened in, half mocking, half curious. Among them was Alex, a tall, dark-haired youth with an adventurous glint in his eyes. "Hear that, guys?" he teased. "Sounds like the perfect challenge for us this Halloween." Sarah, a redhead with freckles and a fiery spirit to match, scoffed. "Those are just tales for kiddos, Alex. We've outgrown those." But a shorter boy, Mason, with sandy hair and glasses, adjusted his frames nervously. "I've heard some stories, though, from my granddad. He said his best friend went in as a dare in '58 and was never seen again." Alex eyed the maze's distant outline, curiosity piqued. All the more reason to prove it's just a silly myth. "What do you say? Midnight challenge." Sarah sighed, clearly outvoted by the excited murmurs of agreement from the group. "All right, but if I get cursed or something, I'm totally blaming you." A gentle chill ran through the air, hinting at the mysteries the night would bring. Oblivious to the impending adventure, the townsfolk continued their merry celebrations, while the setting sun cast long shadows, hinting at the darker tales yet to unfold. Larkspur's public library was a charming relic, a place where time seemed to halt. It was also, as Sarah declared, the best place to dig into the town's past. Rows of wooden shelves, worn by age and heavy with books, created a maze of their own. The scent of old paper lingered in the air, filling their senses as the teenagers set about their research. Alex and Sarah focused on the archived newspapers, scanning through faded headlines and brittle pages, searching for any mention of the maze. Mason, ever the tech-savvy one, busied himself with the library's single computer, attempting to find more recent accounts. Hours passed. Whispers and gasps filled the small study area as the group started to uncover a disturbing pattern. "Listen to this," Alex said, reading aloud from a 1972 newspaper. "Local teen Mark Jennings went missing after friends dared him to enter the cornfield maze. No trace found." Sarah turned a few pages in her stack, her voice unsteady. "And here in '84, two siblings, ages 14 and 16, both disappeared. Just says they were last seen near the maze." Mason looked up, adjusting his glasses. "The online forums have similar tales, but they're more scattered. People just think it's youngsters rebelling and leaving town." A heavy silence descended upon them. The jovial challenge Alex had proposed now bore a sinister weight. The reality of their quest started to sink in. As evening approached, the group transitioned from research to preparation. They met at Sarah's spacious garage, surrounded by tools and supplies. "We'll need flashlights, batteries, and maybe some ropes," Alex began, listing out items and handing them over to his friends. "And cameras. Let's document everything, so when we're out, we can prove once and for all that it's just a maze." Mason hesitated, fingering a small pendant his grandmother had given him. "Are we sure about this, guys? This isn't some made-up ghost story. People have genuinely disappeared." Sarah, despite her earlier bravado, looked conflicted. "Mace has a point, but if we're cautious and stick together, we should be fine, right?" Alex placed a reassuring hand on Mason's shoulder. "We've got this. We're prepared, and we won't do anything foolish. Besides, think of the thrill. As night began to cloak Larkspur in its embrace, the wind carried with it an undercurrent of anticipation. The festival's laughter and songs provided a stark contrast to the task the teenagers had set before them, a task that might finally unveil the secrets hidden deep within the cornfield. The sun hung high and radiant as the group approached the entrance of the cornfield maze. Birds chirped merrily, and a gentle breeze rustled the golden stalks, making it hard to believe that this picturesque scene was the setting of countless dark tales. "This doesn't seem so bad," Sarah commented, glancing around. A maze path stretched ahead, clearly defined and inviting. "Exactly," Alex said with a smirk. "It's just a maze." They ventured in, armed with their gear and high spirits. The towering corn on either side was like nature's own curtain, casting dappled shadows on the ground. At first, the paths were predictable, the turns logical. Their laughter echoed, their footfalls rhythmic on the beaten path. However, as the sun began its descent, casting long, amber streaks across the sky, the once straightforward paths of the maze took on a more devious design. Forks in the path seemed to multiply, and turns that should have taken them in one direction brought them right back to where they began. "It's like it's changing," Mason murmured, his earlier apprehension returning. "Like the maze doesn't want us to find its center." As the daylight waned, the maze took on an eerie life of its own. What were once simple shadows began to move and elongate, dancing in the dimming light. Corn rows seemed to sway against the wind's direction, creating the illusion of movement, of something lurking just beyond sight. Sarah, trying to keep her voice steady, said, "Maybe we should camp for the night. Start fresh in the morning." Alex, looking a bit humbled by the maze's unexpected challenges, nodded. "Agreed. We'll make it to the center tomorrow." The group found a small clearing within the maze, seemingly untouched by its ever-shifting nature. They pitched their tents, the soft glow of their lanterns creating a tiny haven in the vast sea of corn. The group huddled around a makeshift campfire, its light pushing back the encroaching darkness. Mason, clutching his pendant, stared into the flames. "We'll conquer it," he said quietly. Together, as they drifted into an uneasy sleep, the night sounds of the cornfield surrounded them, a symphony of rustling stalks, distant animal calls, and the ever-present whispering of the corn, as if sharing secrets with the moon above. The night draped a silken veil of stars over the world. Within the heart of the maze, the campfire's embers flickered, its light waning but persistent. The world seemed hushed, expectant, waiting for a story yet to unfold. As the group settled into their tents, a soft, haunting murmur permeated the air. At first, it sounded like the gentle rustling of leaves or the distant flow of water. But as the minutes passed, the murmurs grew clearer, forming words and phrases, disjointed and ethereal. "Lost. Forever lost," sighed a voice, mournful and distant. "Turn back. While you can," urged another, tinged with desperation. Sarah, her heart racing, whispered across to Mason's tent, "Do you hear that?" Before he could answer, another voice, this one melodic and sorrowful, began to weave a tale. "Cursed we remain, bound to these fields, to watch others suffer our fate." The voices seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. It felt as if the very corn itself were speaking, sharing tales of those who'd entered the maze and never returned. The group, compelled by a mix of fear and fascination, listened intently. Among the overlapping whispers, Alex discerned a clearer voice, different from the rest. It was ancient, filled with regret. "Beware the heart of the maze," it intoned. "The scarecrow was once like you, alive, vibrant. But in his quest for eternal youth, he bound himself to the maze, becoming its guardian and its prisoner." Alex, entranced, ventured, "Who are you? Can you help us?" The voice responded, its tone softening. "I was once a wanderer, like you, lured by the legend. I can't guide you out, but remember, not all paths in this maze are to be feared. Some may aid you if you listen closely." Throughout the night, the whispers continued, warnings, tales of sorrow, and fleeting moments of hope. The group clung to each other, drawing strength from their shared experience, and the hope that they might succeed where others had failed. They realized that the maze wasn't just a physical challenge, but a test of wills, and they were determined to rise to it. Dawn's early light began to creep over the horizon, casting a muted glow on the vast cornfield. The group, groggy and slightly disoriented from the night's ethereal events, decided it was time to move. With the sun's ascent, the whispered voices grew faint, like a dream fading upon waking. Alex took the lead. "All right, let's stick together. We've got to find the center and then find our way out. But the maze, with its ever-shifting pathways, had other plans. As they delved deeper into its heart, the corn seemed denser, the paths narrower. The golden stalks loomed overhead, obscuring the sky, and the sense of confinement grew. At a particularly tricky junction, amidst a debate about the right way to proceed, Jamie, the youngest of their group with a shock of blonde hair, caught a glimpse of something peculiar a little ways off, a scarecrow silhouetted against the dim light. "Hey, I think I see it. The scarecrow," he called out, excitement evident in his voice. Without waiting for a response, he sprinted ahead, eager to confront the heart of the legend. "Jamie, wait," Sarah shouted, but her voice seemed muffled, swallowed by the corn. In their rush to catch up to Jamie, the group was inadvertently scattered, each taking a different turn at the crossroads. Alex found himself alone, his shouts for his friends echoing unanswered. Minutes felt like hours. Alex, Mason, and Sarah eventually found one another, their faces lined with anxiety. "Where's Jamie?" Mason panted, out of breath. Before they could answer, a chilling scream pierced the air. Following the sound, they raced through winding paths until they stumbled upon a clearing. In its center stood the scarecrow, its figure illuminated by the surreal morning glow. But what truly drew their attention was Jamie, standing motionless, staring deeply into the scarecrow's eyes, which glinted with an unnatural light. The scarecrow's previously aged face now looked slightly rejuvenated, its skin smoother, its expression less weary. Alex tried to move forward, but Sarah held him back, her eyes wide with horror. "It's too late," she whispered. Mason's voice trembled. "We need to get out, now." As they retreated, the scarecrow's gaze seemed to follow them, a silent testament to its power and the price of curiosity. The group's previous determination was replaced by sheer panic. Their singular goal now was to find the exit and escape the grip of the haunted maze. The sun, now higher in the sky, painted streaks of warmth over the cornfield. But its light provided little comfort to the trio, who found themselves trapped within the suffocating grasp of the maze. In their desperate bid to find an exit, Alex strayed slightly from Sarah and Mason. A peculiar glint caught his eye, a half-buried, rusted metal box hidden beneath the earth at the base of a gnarled tree. Curiosity overcoming his trepidation, he dug it out and pried it open. Inside, he found a trove of old artifacts, photographs of past harvest festivals, flyers depicting jovial townsfolk, and most intriguingly, an old leather-bound diary. As he quickly skimmed its pages, a tale of ambition, power, and regret began to unfold. The diary belonged to Eldrick Thorne, a sorcerer from generations past. Eldrick, obsessed with the idea of eternal youth, had struck a dark pact with the very essence of the maze. In exchange for the town's prosperity, ensuring bountiful harvests year after year, he sacrificed his humanity, becoming the guardian of the maze. This guardian, the scarecrow, was bound to feed on souls to fend off eternal dusk, the time where neither day nor night reigns, a reflection of his liminal existence between life and death. As Alex delved deeper into Eldrick's words, the weight of the town's prosperity and its sinister price became clear. Generations of townsfolk had turned a blind eye, attributing the regular disappearances to mere chance, while reaping the benefits of the dark deal. Rejoining Sarah and Mason, Alex relayed his discovery. Sarah, anger flashing in her eyes, said, "So the entire town thrived, knowing the cost. How could they live with themselves?" Mason, ever the pragmatist, replied, "It's not our job to judge the past. Right now, we need to focus on getting out and ensuring no one else falls prey to this curse." Clutching the diary, as though it held the key to their escape, the group pressed on. The truths they'd uncovered only fueled their determination. The time had come to break the cycle, and it was up to them to do it. The night wore on, and the first faint hues of dawn began to paint the horizon. The air grew cooler, and a misty veil settled over the maze. Every sound, every rustle became amplified in the stillness, heightening the group's tension. Sarah, clutching the diary tightly, looked to the east where the sky was gradually brightening. "If this scarecrow is anything like the vampires of lore," she began, thinking aloud, "then sunlight should be its enemy." Alex nodded, catching onto her line of thought. "We need to use the sunlight against it. But how do we direct it to the heart of the maze?" Mason, recalling a childhood science experiment, had an idea. "Mirrors. If we can get a series of mirrors, we can angle and reflect the sunlight, guiding it deep into the maze." They rummaged through their gear. Sarah found a compact mirror, while Alex and Mason contributed their reflective sunglasses. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Positioning themselves at the maze edge, they angled their mirrors to catch the first rays of dawn. The sunlight, diffused and golden, bounced from one mirror to another, creating a chain of light that they hoped would penetrate the maze's dense heart. As the sunlight journeyed deeper, the maze seemed to respond. The paths trembled, the corn rustled more violently, and an unsettling moan echoed, a sound of pain and anger. They knew the scarecrow was feeling the effects. Determined, the trio moved methodically, redirecting their mirrors, advancing cautiously while maintaining the chain of sunlight. The maze resisted, its paths attempting to shift and block their progress, but the group held firm, driven by their mission and the memory of Jamie. The heart of the maze was close now, and the sun had fully claimed the sky. The world was awash with morning light, but the battle was far from over. The true confrontation lay just ahead, and with the promise of a new day fueling them, they ventured forth, ready to face the darkness within. The sun reached its zenith and began its descent, casting the maze in lengthening shadows. Time seemed to flow differently within the corn walls, every tick of the clock echoing with urgency. The further the group ventured, the more hostile the maze became. Paths that once led forward now looped back on themselves. Corn stalks bent and twisted, forming barriers and imprisoning the trio in confounding circles. Murmurs returned, more insistent than before. Turned back, they beckoned, their voices dripping with honeyed deceit. Rest here, forever, another voice cooed, attempting to drown out reason and determination. However, it was Jamie's shadow that haunted them the most. A wraith-like version of their friend, his silhouette flitted between the rows, eyes devoid of recognition. His voice, or what seemed to be his voice, echoed through the maze, dripping with sorrow. "Join me," he whispered, a puppet to the scarecrow's malevolent whims. Mason, on the brink of despair, felt a hand grip his. Sarah, her face set with grim determination, nodded at him, her silent gesture a beacon of hope. "We can't let it win," she murmured. Alex, deep in thought, had a realization. The whispers, Jamie's shadow, their distractions. "We can't engage. We need to focus on the path and the light." Drawing on their collective strength, the trio forged ahead, using their memories and markers they'd left behind to retrace steps and find new passages. Whenever they felt lost or overwhelmed, they'd regroup, their united spirit acting as a shield against the maze's insidious temptations. As midnight drew near, the heart of the maze beckoned. The oppressive atmosphere grew thicker, the weight of countless souls pressing down on them, urging them to give in. But with unwavering resolve, the group pressed on, the looming confrontation with the scarecrow, and the fate of their friend driving them forward into the heart of darkness. The heart of the maze stood in stark contrast to its serpentine passages. It was a vast circular clearing, the ground bare save for the imposing figure of the scarecrow at its center. Its eyes, alight with an otherworldly glow, locked onto the intruders. The world seemed to hold its breath. The only sound was the distant chime of the town clock, signaling the approach of midnight. Alex, clutching a large mirror they'd found along the way, whispered, "Ready." Sarah and Mason nodded, their smaller mirrors in hand, reflecting the dim starlight. The scarecrow moved, its form flowing like liquid shadow, and the very ground beneath them began to shift. Walls of corn rose and fell, attempting to separate and trap them. Shadows, darker than the night, lunged at them, shaped like the souls the scarecrow had consumed. But the trio stood united. Using their mirrors, they caught every available shred of light, casting it towards the scarecrow, keeping it at bay. The first light of dawn was still some time away, but they had to hold on. The confrontation intensified. Each time the scarecrow lashed out, the maze responded, creating obstacles and illusions. Jamie's shadow reappeared, more tangible than before, his voice pleading, "Join us." Mason, with tears in his eyes, shouted back, "We will save you, Jamie." Time seemed both endless and fleeting. And just as hope was beginning to wane, the horizon began to brighten, announcing the arrival of dawn. The first ray of sunlight pierced the darkness, its brilliance magnified through Alex's mirror. Seizing the moment, Alex, with a swift, determined movement, positioned the mirror directly above the scarecrow. A beam of pure sunlight descended, enveloping the creature. The scarecrow writhed, its form contorting in agony as the light seemed to burn and purify. The battle of shadows and light raged on until, with a final, deafening scream, the scarecrow disintegrated, leaving behind only the now harmless wooden post and tattered clothes that had supported its cursed form. The maze stilled, its menacing aura dissipating with the vanquished scarecrow. The group, exhausted but triumphant, collapsed to the ground, the weight of their ordeal finally catching up to them as dawn's golden embrace enveloped the world around them. As the scarecrow's remnants settled, a transformation began in the heart of the maze. Wisps of light, ethereal and delicate, emerged from the ground and the cornstalks. They floated gracefully, twirling and mingling with the early morning mist. Each wisp represented a soul imprisoned for years, now finally free. Among them, a familiar figure formed, Jamie. He looked serene, the pain and torment of his ordeal replaced by peace. He approached his friends, his voice a gentle breeze. "Thank you." With a soft smile, he joined the other souls, all drifting skyward, forming a luminescent tapestry against the backdrop of dawn. The maze itself seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. The previously shifting and treacherous paths now straightened, leading the group unerringly towards the exit. Emerging from the cornfield, the town of Larkspur lay before them, bathed in the soft glow of morning. The fields around were laden with crops, richer and more bountiful than anyone could remember. News of the teenagers' ordeal spread rapidly, and they were hailed as heroes. A harvest festival that year was the grandest ever, celebrating not just the produce, but the end of a dark chapter in Larkspur's history. But for Alex, Sarah, and Mason, the events in the maze had left an indelible mark. Their innocence and naivety had been replaced by a maturity born of facing and overcoming true evil. While the town continued its festivities, the three friends met under the old oak tree on the outskirts. "We can't stay," Alex voiced what they all felt. "Larkspur will always be home, but there's a world out there. We need to move forward." Sarah, clutching the diary they'd found, nodded. "We carry the legend with us, ensuring it's never forgotten, ensuring such a curse never befalls another town." Mason gazed at the horizon, where the sun continued its ascent. "And we carry Jamie in our hearts, a reminder of the price of curiosity and the value of true friendship." Together, with their shared memories and scars as their bond, the trio set off towards new horizons, their faces illuminated by the promise of a new dawn. You've journeyed with us through the twisted pathways of the unknown and have emerged, perhaps not unscathed. Remember, dear listeners, the shadows you glimpse from the corner of your eye may not be mere figments of imagination. Until next time, keep your lights on and your ears tuned to our scary stories. Sweet dreams. This is our Scary Stories signing off for tonight.